Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. This evening, we warmly welcome Mr. Matthew Keane, Director of Young Veterans. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Joseph's Primary School, Corindi, New South Wales. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 Australian men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Charles Lloyd Kitchner Cock. Charles Cock was born in Kadina, South Australia on the 11th of May 1915, the son of Hosea and Elizabeth Cock. Known as Kitch, after attending Kadina Technical School, he worked as a grocer's assistant in Kadina. Charles Cock enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 4th of June 1940. As his mother had passed away in 1937 and his father in 1939, he listed his brother George, who was serving in the 2nd 10th Battalion, as his next of kin. Cock was allotted to the newly raised 2nd 43rd Battalion, which had formed at Woodside Camp near Adelaide, initially becoming part of the 8th Division's 24th Brigade. After some initial training, Cock had a period of pre-embarkation leave in late November and early December. Before the end of the year, his battalion was transferred to the newly formed 9th Division and left South Australia, moving to Melbourne, where it joined the convoy, taking its brigade to the Middle East. After a stop at Colombo, the battalion arrived in the Middle East in early February 1941 and went into camp at Qasa, north of Gaza in Palestine. By early 1941, the British advance in the Western Desert had reached El Agheila. In March, the 9th Division, including Cock's 2nd 43rd Battalion, was brought to Libya to garrison the east of Tobruk. As the division did not have enough vehicles to bring all its units forwards towards Benghazi, the 24th Brigade, including the 2nd 43rd, remained in Tobruk. The situation quickly changed in April. The German Afrika Korps, leading the Axis counterattack, pushed to the British from El Agheila, and the 9th Division withdrew to Tobruk. The division defended Tobruk for the next 6 months. Cock and his battalion participated in the usual pattern of defensive duties, manning parts of the Red Line, working on the Blue Line, and aggressively patrolling no man's land. On the 11th of August, Cock was wounded in action, receiving multiple bullet wounds. He was evacuated to hospital and after treatment recuperated at a convalescent depot. Before rejoining his unit, he transferred to a training battalion, rejoining his unit in late October 1941. In September and October, the majority of the Australian force at Tobruk was evacuated by sea. The 2nd 43rd left in the early hours of the 17th of October and sailed to Alexandria before transferring to the camp in Palestine. It later moved to Syria and Lebanon for rest, training and garrison duties. By July 1942, the war in North Africa had become critical. The Germans and Italians had reached El Alamein in Egypt, about 110 kilometres from Alexandria. The 9th Division was rushed to El Alamein and held the northern sector for almost 4 months, as the British 8th Army was reinforced for a new offensive. The 2nd 43rd reached the Alamein front on the 5th of July and 2 days later conducted a highly successful night raid. The division attacked 10 days later. On the 17th of July, the 2nd 43rd and 2nd 32nd Battalions moved inland, fighting along the ridge line to Ruin Ridge. The 2nd 32nd led the attack, advancing towards Katara Track. The 2nd 43rd then followed towards Ruin Ridge, which was briefly captured later that month. Cock was wounded during the fighting on the 22nd of July and was evacuated to hospital with a wound to his left arm. The wound was not very serious, however, and he was able to rejoin his unit a few weeks later. During the Allied offensive that started in late October, the 24th Brigade was in reserve, tasked with deceiving the Axis forces by faking an attack. The 2nd 43rd and 2nd 28th raided enemy lines, while the 2nd 32nd directed a smokescreen and placed dummy soldiers in no man's land. On the night of the 31st of October, the 24th Brigade relieved the 26th Brigade and moved forward to the blockhouse area to take part in the main fighting. While Alamein was a great success for the Allies, it was a bloody success. On the 1st of November, the 2nd 43rd Battalion suffered over 100 casualties, testament to the intensity of the battle. Amongst the dead was Private Charles Cock. He was 27 years old. Today, his remains lie buried in El Alamein War Cemetery under the inscription, "He died a hero." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst more than 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Charles Lloyd Kitchner, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.